welcome to the Law of Positivism podcast. I'm your host, Shireen, and I'm the creator of Law of Positivism. I'm here to help you on your spiritual and healing journey. I am a certified yoga and meditation teacher, a student of Chinese medicine, a doula, a Reiki practitioner, and a passionate, highly sensitive person. I want to use my knowledge to channel information and messages for you to grow on all levels. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm so grateful that you're here, and we're in the midst of a winter solstice, which is a beautiful time of the year in the winter now in the Northern Hemisphere, and we've been going through a darker period which has allowed us to go inwards, to be more reflective, introvert, and now the sun is getting born again. So that means that slowly nature starts its rebirth as well, even if we're in the middle of wintertime here in the Northern Hemisphere. And I think this is a beautiful time to just slow down, contemplate, see what you want to create with this new energy, start to have the practices that you want to create new thought patterns, new things in your life, new relationships, and more self-love. I think this is a beautiful time. I'm really looking forward to this new and fresh energy. And today I have a beautiful guest, Jessie Golden. She's a devoted mother, model, Hatha yoga teacher, holistic health practitioner, author, and the creator of the Golden Secrets. And she has such an inspirational and empowering story to share of her healing journey with an autoimmune condition called RA. And she shares her story and how she has went through this deep healing journey, and she has been trying different modalities, connecting back to her body, creating more love and self-nurturing through this journey. I think it's so inspiring what she's done and what she's sharing. She shares her journey in her book as well, and I hope that this episode helps you if you're on a healing path to see how you can heal on all levels of your body through different lifestyle changes, but also through energetic healing and healing emotional wounds that also can create dis-ease in the body. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really appreciate it when you're sharing the podcast, because it helps others to find a podcast that maybe need it on their journey. And I'm really grateful for all of you who leave reviews and ratings on iTunes. You can also find the podcast on YouTube, where I share sometimes videos as well and meditations. So you can check it out on Law of Positivism. And if you want to connect with me, you can just connect with me on Instagram at Law of Positivism. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, and welcome to the podcast, Jessie.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy we got to connect.
I'm so grateful that you're here. And I always start by asking, how do you stay mindful and present?
I actually did a little bit of that right before I got on, because my family's home and I was trying to find some quiet space so I could chat with you. I do a couple things. Usually it sounds silly, but I look down so I could be where my feet are. And I close my eyes for a second, check my breath, and just kind of scan my body and see where everything's at, so that I can respond from a good place and just kind of slow down.
That's beautiful. I love that. What a great idea to look down and see how you're grounding down through your feet, or if you're sitting down, like through your hips and legs. It's
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm so excited to talk to you. I mean, we have been connecting on Instagram for years now, but we have never talked. And I think your story is so inspiring. I would love for you to maybe give some background, who you are, for the listeners who haven't seen or followed you or know who you are, if you want to give a short introduction.
Yeah. Well, my name's Jessie Golden, and I am a mother. I'm 42. I just turned 42 in
Mm.
December. And I grew up as a dancer. My mom had a dance studio for years, so I grew up as a ballerina. And then I transitioned into yoga, became a yoga teacher. And I actually made a living modeling my entire life. But it wasn't a passion of mine or anything. It just kind of allowed me freedom. And then I had my son when I was 29. And about 4 years after I had him, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which was a complete shock. I didn't even know what that was or what that diagnosis meant. And I was what I thought was the epitome of health before I got diagnosed. So it was just so shocking. But then through my journey of trying to heal myself with rheumatoid arthritis, I became a holistic health practitioner. And now I like to say that I'm thriving with RA. I choose to thrive with it. I've had it 12 years. But about halfway through, I wrote a book. So much of my life has been inspired through living with this disease. So I've just kind of chosen to look at it as my teacher and a blessing and kind of take what I can from it. Although my work for the last year has been to detach from it. Like, okay, I've learned all my lessons. I don't need to have you anymore.
Yeah.
But currently I actually have a skincare line that I handcraft. Everything's organic and plant-based. And that's what I do full time now.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's so interesting when I hear, like, many of us have some type of health issue or something that actually just triggers us to go into that which we are supposed to do, because maybe we wouldn't have the interests that we have in yoga, healing, all of this, if we wouldn't have had the challenges ourselves. So I think I hear it from so many guests that have been
Mm-hmm.
on the podcast, and it feels like it's, yeah, like you said, it's also about taking the good from it and not staying in it either. It's like, how do I move on? And
Yeah.
I remember that I read your story a couple of years ago when you shared it, and I didn't have I didn't know what RA is until now that I'm studying nursing, that we studied these different types of this is an autoimmune
Mm-hmm.
condition, right? And I
Yep.
think it's so growing in society, and especially in women, different types of autoimmune conditions, that
Yeah.
it can have to do with the thyroid, or yeah, like in your case, RA. There's so many, endometriosis, like there's so much, and I'm just like wondering why this has become so widespread and when you started studying this holistically, what findings did you come to?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. Obviously, I think the first place that everybody goes is diet. You know, that's the first way to empower yourself when you're going through health issues. And I always say, the sicker you are, the cleaner you need to be. It's not forever because I think it could be really overwhelming. But through my journey, so much, kind of like what you were saying just a minute ago, like so much of my journey has been an internal practice and a teacher. There's been times where I've been in complete remission and it didn't matter what I was eating or what I was doing or, not doing. But if I was in a happy place spiritually and I wasn't overworking myself and I was practicing self-love, then I was fine. So it's interesting that you're exactly right. I think even more women than men, especially with RA, get it, and it's more common for women after they have their first child. So I think there's a hormonal shift that can also trigger it. But I think we're just doing so much. It's so interesting. I've talked to so many women and people that have RA, and I've noticed a lot of similar character traits as well. But I think just women in general, I think we're doing too much, and it's driving our immune systems to just go, 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 go. And that's exactly what RA is. Like, your immune system is attacking itself. So,
Exactly.
it's really interesting. I'm always trying to figure it out. And, scientifically, I think maybe vaccines could have had something to do with it. But I always try and look more at like the spiritual side of things and like, okay, what can I learn here? And it's taught me so much humility and patience, and far more than anything I could have learned in a book or school, having actually dealt with this for so long. It's given me a lot of compassion for people. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always tough to because in Western medicine, I also study Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and in there's so much. I'm studying both actually, Western and Eastern, and there's so much that could be complementary, or how do you say it? It's like you can if one piece is not in one of the practices, you can find it in the other, because in
Yes.
Chinese medicine there's always we go to not just the physical, what's happening physically, it's also like emotionally, how is your energy system balanced, how there's so many more components that can be balanced, and they don't really see anything as really I don't want to use the word chronic, but it's there's always a balance that can be made. And of course, I think it's so empowering to find other tools, because I think if you don't look at this holistically, you kind of get stuck, and then you have maybe some medications to I'm not really sure, but I think it's like anti-inflammatory, things like that. While you can do so much more with what you said, with diet and these other aspects as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think with chronic disease, like, that's where holistic medicine really prevails. I think if like you get into a car accident or you have a heart attack, like, I don't want someone giving me cayenne pepper or
No.
like looking at my tongue, I want
Exactly.
I want to go to the hospital and be taken care of. But with chronic disease, it's really tricky because the way that Western medicine deals with it is, you're exactly right. They just put you on medication. They don't look at anything else. And then, of course, that medication creates a vicious cycle of other imbalances in your system, your microbiome, and just destroys your health in other ways. So you're kind of forced to go down. I've pretty much gone down every road there at one point or another, and just kind of created my own little toolbox. And I'm still open to, there's new things every other day. There's like new diets and, new machine that I have to get, or a sauna, or it's like,
Mm.
what trick can I try?
Yeah, I think, but that's really great to have those tools. I think a lot of people are not even aware or conscious that there are other ways. I think it differs from country to country, but uh, many people get a type of diagnosis and then don't know that there are so many paths to recovery or to improve the symptoms. And um, yeah, I've heard some interesting thoughts around autoimmune. And the first thing is not to think that the body is, if even if the cells are doing something similar to attacking itself, like not thinking that the body is destroying
Yes.
itself, right? Because
Yeah,
that
the
just
medical medium says that. He says that a lot.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yeah, so it's interesting. And what you said also with there's always new findings and diets that are coming out. And what I've seen uh, on my path is that it's so individual what works, because even our DNA and our ancestry needs different things, and how we eat and how we sleep and the environment that we are in. Like now that I'm studying, I also see that certain environments, like they can see in the north, like where I'm from, in the colder regions, like certain type of autoimmune diseases are more common. And yeah, like, so the weather is is another, and that's what when Chinese medicine really uh, steps in, and like the weather does affect us. It's like an external factor that does affect our body. So we're always living with nature and the seasons as well, and we have to adapt to the cold or the heat in how we eat as well.
Absolutely. I talk about a lot of that in my book, actually, because
Mhm.
I remember when I was writing my book, I was like, who am I to write a book? Like, I don't know everything, but I felt like what I did learn, I wanted to share. And I had that epiphany, exactly what you're saying. I was vegetarian most of my life. So I really stood on a pedestal since like 11 years old, judging people and trying to turn everybody vegetarian.
Mm.
And when I wrote my book, I had come to the epiphany that exactly what you said, everybody's different. So I kind of guide you through what's your ancestry, where do you live, what grows where you're currently living, um, even to the point of like, if you do travel, for example, like pineapple is too expansive for my body. It's too sugary because I'm Eastern
Mm.
European, so like berries and apples are better for me. But if I go to
Mm.
Hawaii, your body adapts, and you better assimilate the nutrients from the pineapple when you're in that tropical environment, and it's just so fascinating.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
something else I learned when I did macrobiotics. That was like the one thing that really helped me. I had a macrobiotic
Mm.
counselor by the name of Mina Dobik, and a lot of it's based on Chinese medicine as well. And they even talked about
Yeah.
like I was eating a lot of soft food because crunchy
Mm.
food would make my body tighter and more rigid.
Mm.
So I was doing a
Yeah.
lot of porridge, a lot of soup, a lot of root vegetables, and soft. Everything was soft, so my body didn't have to work really hard to digest it. I didn't have to chew as much, and it was supposed to just kind of, I just love that concept. Like, it's so
Mm.
interesting to me. Like, yeah, that makes so much sense if you're eating like crunchy and food that's difficult to chew, and it's going to show up in your body like that. I find it
Yeah.
fascinating.
It makes sense actually when we think like that. Like when you have, so in Chinese medicine, it's like you can have heat, you can have cold, wind. It's all of the natural things that are occurring around us can attack the body as well, and or it can be something that's been going on, like how we've been eating. So it makes sense if someone is has like a more
Cold, windy.
rigid or exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Then you need like the heat, and it really makes sense from any perspective. Like when you have a cold, like you have a cold, right?
Exactly.
It's already in the language. Then you need something warm to get out the cold, and the same when you have cramps. Like what causes cramps? It's stagnation. Something is stuck. Something is
Yes.
not. So these concepts, when we think about it, it makes more sense. We understand our body a little bit better, and when you can see it like that, you can also just awareness creates healing, but also you can know how to, what type of weather is good for you, or just should you stay warm, should you have more warm foods, because I think that one thing that has been maybe and is still is like eating like cold salads. That's
Mm.
when we see something that is healthy, it's like a picture of that, but it's actually very hard for the body to take up this, like we have this fire in our agni in our belly, and when we put so much cold and cold drinks, and it's not good for the body.
Mm.
It has to work hard to stay warm.
Yes.
So yeah, I love those concepts. And I'm curious also because one of the things we connected on was yoga. We both practice yoga. When did you start with yoga, and was that before you had your diagnosis or after?
Yeah, way before. So I was a ballerina, and then I started yoga at 18. My cousin, who was a yoga teacher, had given me a yoga book, and I just fell in love. And then I started practicing religiously probably when I was 20, like going to class every day. And for me, it was just such a shift from growing up in a ballet studio where you're taught to just ignore your body and push through all the pain and be perfect and be robotic. And, it was a very tough
Mm.
environment to grow up in. And then walk into a yoga class, and for the first time, somebody taught me how to breathe. Like, you're never taught how to breathe in ballet, which is insane. And, and there was no mirrors, so I couldn't judge myself. So, they told you to listen to your body, to come to child's pose if you were tired. I was like, what is this? This is crazy. And, it was the first time that I made that like connection. Like physically, I could already do all that crazy stuff because I was a trained ballerina my whole life. But all the other stuff, the mind, the body, it felt like I had come home. Like it was just a remembrance, like, oh, thank God, here you are. And, yoga saved my life more times than I can count. It's as you know, because you're a yogi, it's just like if you spend enough time on the mat, everything that you learn on the mat translates into your life, and it just becomes an endless practice. Like, I'm constantly practicing yoga. It's not just when I'm on the mat. It's just a part of me. It's completely changed my life.
Yeah, and did you feel that that was also how was that when you started having these physical issues and practicing yoga? Was it still possible like before you started healing, and how did it affect you?
Yeah, actually, I started my yoga certification the same week I got diagnosed. And then my RA came on so quick. So to the point where I couldn't practice the asana practice anymore. And I talked to my teachers and I told them, like, this is what's going on with me. And of course they said, as long as you're here, you'll get credit for it. So the crazy thing is that was such a humbling experience for me, because looking back on it now, I actually went to my yoga teacher training with my ego. I went there thinking, like, I'm a ballerina, I've been studying yoga, I just want to get my stamp of approval, because I was still modeling at the time and all the yoga companies were just starting to come about, and I wanted to separate myself from the models. I wanted to be able to say, look, I'm a yoga teacher as well. And the RA came on, so I never got to actually do any of the asana practice. But it was, the blessing in disguise was I had to sit on the sidelines watching all my peers practice, which was the most uncomfortable asana for me to be in. Because I had always relied on my body. I had always relied on communicating through my body. I was a dancer. That's like how I survived my entire life. And then I was forced to sit on the sidelines and watch. But that's when I really learned yoga. That's when all the other limbs of yoga came into my life. That's when I really focused on the internal practice and started noticing my thought patterns and dissecting my entire life, because I couldn't rely on my body like I always had. And eventually, I mean, for like a year, I didn't walk, basically. I mean, I could shuffle like around 4 o'clock. I could do like little walks, like I was 100 years old. But then eventually, when I got better the first time, when I put myself into remission, I started training like I was like gonna do Ironman. I started running. I had never ran before, and I started practicing, and I was hiking, and I got into the best shape of my life to prove to myself. But I also felt like back then, this was 12 years ago, there was no face. There was no face of RA. RA was associated with an old person's disease. There was nobody like me that could do all this crazy yoga stuff and have RA. Like it was impossible. Like nobody thought that could be. So I was really motivated to kind of prove to myself and prove to everybody else that I wasn't my diagnosis.
Wow, that is so beautiful. I think it sounds, I mean, you have to be very strong to get the diagnosis, and then like kind of, you know, the feeling when you lose control, you can't control your body in the same way that you have before. But then also it must be so empowering to go from that to where you went, and you like really, I'm really curious, like how long did it take for you from, like, let's say those times when you barely could walk to started running? Like how long was that time period?
So I did this macrobiotic diet for 6 months, and it was a really, really strict lifestyle diet, and all kinds of different body compresses and ginger scrubs, and I had to drink certain things at certain times, that's the certain time of the day associated with this organ. And I mean, it was just like my whole life was regimen. But I was getting worse, and my counselor said, you might get worse before you get better. But it got to the point where my family intervened, because I was raising my son. I had to hire help, obviously, because I could barely take care of myself. And I finally...
And how old was your son back then?
He was 4.
Oh,
Yeah, and he doesn't remember any of it. It's funny because he's 16 now. And
Yeah, it's big.
yeah, and I'm like, do you remember?
Mm,
Like, he doesn't remember any of it. So I tried to always keep things very positive, and I actually didn't
mm,
even tell him that I had RA till he was like 11 or something. So I always
mm,
kind of kept it quiet. But um, there was a combination between Western and Eastern medicine. So I had spent 6 months cleaning, detoxing through this macrobiotic way. And then my family intervened and they said, you need to go back to the doctor. And by the time I had gone back to the doctor, I had inflammation of my heart and my eyes and my lungs. And that's the thing with RA,
mm,
is it doesn't just affect your joints. So they actually hooked me up to an IV of steroids for an hour, which was the first time that I had ever done anything like that. And then they put me on, it's called a TNF blocker. It's like one of the most common drugs for rheumatoid arthritis. It's like one of the ones that is supposed to stop the progression of damage, but it's really horrible on the body. Like, one of the side effects is leukemia.
mm,
So I did that for a couple months, and that's when my body responded really well. And I think it was because I was so clean and I was doing everything and I was so positive and
mm,
clear, and it worked, and I was like, I'm not going to be on this stuff forever. So I weaned myself off of it, which you're not really supposed to do.
mm,
But I slowly weaned myself off of it, and I was fine. And
mm,
I was in remission for a couple of years, and in the last 12 years, it's come and gone, where it's gone in remission and then it's come back. And but that
mm.
particular time, I think it was like the next day I started running after I had
Wow.
gotten that shot of that hour long of steroid. I just was so
Mm,
excited that my body was able to move again, and I was so grateful. And I had done the work, and I
mm,
was like, and I remember that moment. I was like, if I stay on top of this, it cannot get a hold of me. And that's part of the reason why I started running. It's almost like I was running to get ahead of it. Like, if I keep
mm,
running and keep my body moving, then it can't stop me.
mm.
You know,
Yeah, so
psychological.
empowering.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah, wow. So yeah, that shows that really there a combination is important. So you can't just rely on one thing. And I mean, many conditions there are no Western solutions either. Like basically, you have to get some other um, healings as well. But did you do any, like, how was the work on because we talked about this also, like where does this come from maybe a spiritual emotional level, like have you seen that pattern, have you done work on that level as well? I assume you have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so Louise Hay says that RA is self criticism.
Mm,
And
okay.
it's so right on the dot. And it's kind of created my life full circle. So, like I said, I grew up in the dance studio, literally, because my mom owned the dance studio. So I grew up in front
Mm,
of the mirror. So I had a ballet teacher and my mom critiquing me 24/7 to
mm,
be this epitome, the ballerina perfection that doesn't exist. And then if they weren't critiquing me, I was critiquing myself. So my inner
mm,
dialogue was horrible, like just poison, constant, just eating myself up. And coming to where I am now is I still practice daily. It's just positive affirmation, is noticing when I'm having these negative thoughts and then trying to switch them. And that's the whole reason with my skincare line I actually have a like a positive affirmation card that comes with each product. So that way, when you're doing your daily self-care rituals, the product can be a tool to remind you to say some positive affirmations to retrain your brain. Because I just read this quote. It was like 80% of our thoughts are negative and subconscious on a daily basis. And we have to retrain ourselves to think positive because we're wired for the negative as like a survival mechanism. And it's still my daily practice. You know, sometimes I'll catch myself, but that was a huge epiphany for me when I was bedridden and I was sitting there with my thoughts and I was noticing that just about every thought I was having was picking myself apart, you know.
Yes, that's how Law of Positivism was born.
Oh, I love that.
Exactly my journey into that. That
Oh, that's beautiful.
can, yeah, retraining my mind and yeah, all the and when you start realizing certain things, how it has shaped us, it's really, it unfolds like, and it's not as just a one time thing. It's constantly unfolding a layer that we have to break through and heal. And I'm thinking how common it is with this mother wound, which is was that something that you worked on together also with your mother to heal that, like how it was when you grew up in the studio?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work accepting my mom, and she was so loving. She was so loving, but she just had such high expectations for herself that were unfulfilled, and she put them on me. But I say that, and then at the same time, it's like I loved being a ballerina. I loved growing up in the studio and it, you know, dance before I found yoga. Dance saved my life. Like I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I didn't have dance, I don't know how I would have made it through anything. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly it. It's like I'll have these moments where everything in my life feels pretty good, and then my body will shut down in some way, and I'm like, oh, what's the lesson today? What do I have to work on today? Is it, do I need to call my mom? Is it spiritual? Am I eating something bad? Am I, you know, I'm constantly like looking, but what I've realized for sure is that the healing never ends. Like whether you have a diagnosis like me or, you know, you're completely healthy, I feel like we're all on this continuous healing journey. Like we're either in a moment of blessing or a moment of despair, and we're just kind of like going between. It's like a never ending,
Yeah.
and we just have to become better students so that we can navigate with grace through both of them.
Yeah, definitely. And how has this also affected, because you're a mother too, so you're nurturing yourself and you have your son. How has this shaped you as a mother?
You know, my son actually taught me self-love, like through being a mother was the biggest, like women in general, like I feel like some women, not until they get pregnant do they actually care what they put in their body and listen to their body when their body's tired and protect themselves and put boundaries up. It's like motherhood did something to me. I mean, I love being a mother. I fully came into my own when I became a mom, and I'm so grateful because he's such a good kid, and we haven't had the easiest road because I was a single mom for so long, but we're really close because of that. So that's the blessing. And through loving him, like I've learned to love myself because I'm all he has. And if I'm not good, then, you know, so it's kind of interesting. But he's incredible. He's such an old wise soul.
Yeah, he looks so much like you. So you both are beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
I also want to congratulate you. You got married. I mean, I can see that having your partner can also be a healing. Not that we only depend on that, but it can also help us to face ourselves and to eh, get even more healing. I remember when I met my husband that a lot of healing occurred.
Oh,
A lot, like even physically.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, just having the support, he is,
Mm.
I'm so grateful that I feel like because I did the work with the self love and stuff, I was able to bring someone in like him. A couple years ago, I wasn't capable of bringing in. He's divine masculine. He's so kind and makes me feel safe, and he's always there because it's not easy dealing with somebody that has a chronic disease, because some days I still have days where I'm not doing that great, and he's just so understanding and so positive, and he believes in me so much. And yeah, I mean, we're constantly growing and healing together for sure.
That's very beautiful. It's amazing to have that support. And what was the name of your book? Maybe you didn't said it in the beginning.
Oh, it's The Golden Secrets to Optimal Health.
Beautiful. And then you have this skincare line. Did you do gua sha as well? I saw something the other
Yes,
day.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I have two stones. I have
Mm,
one for the face and one for the body. I was
mm,
actually introduced to it years ago when I had a Chinese doctor, and
mm,
she would practice on my hands to like break up all the
mm,
where I had all the stuff, break up all the stagnant blood
exactly.
flow. And but that was
Yeah.
not. I always tell people, I'm like, traditional gua sha is not um, as kind as we practice it here. Like I remember
Mm,
basically crying. It was like
exactly. It's really,
torture.
yeah, and you're all red
Yes,
afterwards.
yes. Like,
It looks like
see,
you
see, see. I'm like,
bruised.
yeah, I see the blood flow. Great. Yeah. But I still practice,
Oh.
on myself. I do a little bit
Mhm.
gentler practice now, but I think that
Mm,
that's such a huge aspect. When I decided to carry those in my line, I obviously did like tons of research because I wanted to make sure we had the best ones. And it just makes so much sense. Like everything, like we were talking about, like I've tried so many different modalities in healing myself, but the energy flow of the body and the chi and keeping things moving and not stagnant is, I think, something that at least over here we're missing. Like, so
mm,
many people are just stagnant and sitting there, and they're just, everything's blocked in their bodies, and
mm.
want to get things moving.
Yeah, exactly. That's why gua sha is great, and for the face as well, to just get blood flow and stimulate the skin and everything. It's so easy instead of doing other things that are more invasive. It's such a good way, and also to connect with the body. When you're doing that, you're connecting to different parts of your body
Ah,
which you might not otherwise.
exactly. It's such a beautiful ritual. Like that's what I love about sharing my skincare products, is like I really want to encourage people to have these acts of self-love, because like I get it. Like I'm a mom and I'm busy working, and sometimes my 5-minute gua sha at night is the only time I have to myself. And it's where I can like check in with myself and see where I'm at and check my body out, see what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. And is there anything else you're doing, or any thing you're sharing now that you want to share with the listeners? Anything that's coming up?
No, I mean, just the golden secrets is we're constantly expanding and fine tuning, and that keeps me so busy.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so I'm gonna definitely put the links in the show notes so the listeners can check that out. And do you have any last thing you want to share?
Oh, it was so nice connecting with you, and I hope the listeners got something out of there that resonates with them.
Definitely. I loved your perspective. I'm very grateful that you're here, and I think there's so much hope and wisdom in what you're sharing from your path, and I think a lot of people can benefit from that and empower themselves with new tools and new ways of healing. So I'm really grateful that you took your time to share. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this was as inspiring for you as it was for me. I'm so grateful that Jessie came on and shared her story, which is a really inspiring and empowering story. I know many of you are going through similar things in your body, and it's all about becoming aware and also starting to love your body and healing from within. So if you want to check out any work that Jessie is doing, you can find all of her links in the show notes. And I really appreciate you. I'm wishing you a beautiful winter solstice, Christmas, and take this time for yourself to just connect back and rest. So let's take a deep breath in together, in through the nose, and exhale out through the mouth. And namaste.